Hi everyone, welcome to Tacton Summit. First of all, my kids always ask me, what are you doing, Dad? Are you just up on the stage talking about stuff all the time? And I need to send them a selfie of us. Can you please just say, hey, hey? 1, 2, 3, hey, hey. Thank you. But anyway, so the reason why I was invited to have a conversation today is because we want to talk about integrations. And I do that all the time. So some of you guys have probably seen me in webinars or have probably been in your offices. Hey, Gunnar, by the way. So anyway, who am I? I'm a principal solution architect at Tacton. Nerd is also a word that is being used. I'm a hockey player. I play something called beer hockey in Chicago, where I live right now. And of course, I represent Sweden. I'm also married to a Finnish girl, so I should probably have a kind of an equivalent jersey that says Finland, but I'm not going to do that. Sorry. Anteeksi. But anyway, so part of the conversation that was in the presentation yesterday in regards of, I think it was Sativa, that was Anders Ingeset was talking about that and was about actually allowing yourself to make mistakes and learn from them. And I found this really nice hockey metaphor, which is basically, I mean, you need to be willing to get knocked down to get back up. And that's basically what I see as well. Like, I love making mistakes because that makes me able to learn and able to become a better person. Anyway, part of the conversation that I have most of the times, and you've probably seen these slides previously, this one at least, is that I'm an expert in 3 letters acronyms. And you guys love that, right? We got CRM. We got ERPs, we got PIMs, we got PLMs, and of course CPQ there in the middle. And all the conversations that I have is just like, okay, so what does this mean? I mean, we have the customer relationship management. You got the ERP for handling orders. We got PIM, that is product information management, and we got PLMs for product structures and variance lifecycle management. And all of these things need to be connected, right? And when we're looking at this, we are totally agnostic. And I think that you've heard me saying that before. Because we know that there are so many differences in the way how you are setting up your systems. And when we're talking about CRMs, Salesforce and Dynamics are usually the ones that we're seeing out there. HubSpot is something that pops up all the time, and I'm pretty sure that we have some of you that is using HubSpot. There's also Salesforce C4C, once again. Hey, Gunnar. Part of this. And the whole idea that we want to be able to enable is a possibility for you to either have 1 or 3 in your landscape. When it gets to the ERP systems, we see the same thing. We see a lot of different ERP systems. We see SAP, ECC6, we see S4HANA, we see a lot of different things out there in terms of Dynamics, which is apparently the new upcoming ERP system. I used to work for a company implementing Accepta and Navision for a while, and I think we have some Danish people here as well, so Navision is Danish, right? If I remember it correctly. The same goes for Oracle, Infor, and NetSuite. And what we have seen over the years is that you don't only have 1 ERP system, you have multiple. Because you have acquired companies. You have had upgrades of different versions of your ERP system. And all that needs to be handled in some kind of way. We got the PLM systems out there. The same thing there, multiple different PLM systems. They're basically the same thing, but it's compatible with something that you probably have in terms of CAD systems. PIM, how many of you guys are using PIM system, product information management? We have 3, 4, we got a couple, that's good. Because this is one thing that we see coming more and more. And a PIM system is all about handling information such as documents, handling texts, translations, images, videos, all these different things that needs to be part of the equation. But okay, so we have talked about these 3 letters acronym. Why are we doing that? Because each and every one of these systems has a specific purpose, right? It can have multiple purposes, but when we have the CRM, as I mentioned previously, this is account and opportunity management. We got the ERP that is order management, supply management, and all these different things. But they need to be able to communicate in some kind of way, right? Because I think I got the question, that was yesterday during the dinner. I guess that everyone got the question, do you have any allergies? And I said, no, I don't have any food allergies. But I'm allergic to having double maintenance of data. And I'm pretty sure that everyone has the same thing. And what does that mean? That means that we need to be able to connect these different systems and transfer the information and the data from each and every system to the other. And how do we do that? I think it was 1 year ago, I was standing on the stage in Chicago. That was the Tacton Summit in Chicago. And I said, middleware, middleware, middleware. And this is absolutely one of the things that I thought was in every company's strategy to decide upon how you should integrate between the different systems. Apparently it's not. But from Tacton's standpoint, and I think that should be in your strategy as well, is to use a middleware to facilitate the connection between the different systems. All right, so what does that mean? It means that we have something in the middle that should be handling the different sets of the integration aspects. And what we have in terms of responsibilities for our middleware. We talked about connecting, right? I think I've been working with IT and development since I was probably 20, and I've built so many different integrations where I've had point-to-point integrations. What happens when you have an upgrade? That means that every point that has a connection to that specific upgraded system needs to be developed. It needs to be changed. That can be a lot of different connections that needs to be maintained. But if you have a middleware, that's the part that you should facilitate all the different connections. The other part is orchestration of the integration. And what does orchestration mean? I talked about a different ERP system, and I like to use this example. I'm pretty sure that everyone that has, I guess that we have SAP users out here. Once again, I know you are. And you are moving from an ECC 6 on-prem version, old version of SAP, and then you decide upon that you should move over to an S/4HANA. And there might be products that you don't really want to transfer over to your S/4HANA instance. And that means that you all of a sudden, even though that you're using SAP, you have 2 instances. And then you need to have somewhere where you would decide upon which order should go to the old system and which one should go to the new system. And that's the orchestration that comes into play when it gets to the middleware. And of course, orchestration is just pointing at the different boxes or different connections. But there are, of course, different types of data and data formats. And what we want to do here is just give the responsibility to the middleware to handling the transformation of the data between the different formats. Because that means that you can do this in one place and monitoring it. All right. I guess if you've seen one of my webinars, you've probably seen all this and you've heard me talking about these. What's new? And thank you so much for that, Jesper. But what have happened is Tacton has actually fallen in love. In Workato. And the reason why we're going to talk about this is of course a little bit of a background story. So why are we using Workato? Why do we go forward with Workato? I mean, a lot of our customers already have an integration platforms established in their system landscape. And I mean, in that case, it's no reason for you to move over to this. And why did we actually go for Workato? It's kind of interesting because I've been working with a lot of companies using SAP CPI or MuleSoft or Boomi as an integration platform. But my wife that is working for a company, fancy enough, she's a CTO at that company. She mentioned that she's implementing something called Workato. And she asked me if I knew anything about Workato. And I said, no, I don't know at all what Workato is. What is it? It's a connection point. And I was like, well, what is a connection point? And then, of course, that created some kind of a curiosity for me. Because if I don't know anything about this specific thing, of course, that is something that I can't really handle. So I started going through some investigation and found out that Workato is actually a middleware. So that's not a connection point, it's a middleware. And I told my wife that, and now she's using middleware as well. But with that said, I started talking to a guy named Santiago over at Workato, and I started talking about, okay, so why is Workato so great? He said that you can actually embed this into your solution. And why is that a specific thing? Yeah, that means that you can have an experience that is embedded within your solution, within Tacton CPQ in this case. So that means that you can administrate your connections between Tacton CPQ and all these kind of different systems from within Tacton CPQ administration. And that's our plan going forward, which is kind of interesting, right? All right, and I'm going to continue a little bit talking about Workato. And one of the things that you know about Tacton CPQ is that, I mean, we love the Magic Quadrant. Of course, that's because we are up here. And basically, looking at that means that we are best in breeds when it gets to CPQs. Then we should match with the best in breeds with the integration platforms or middleware. And this is where Workato is at. So of course, that means that what we have right now is that we have a match between two different sets of context, but still in the leaders quadrant. Okay, so what is Workato? And why is that a good fit? We have already talked about low code, no code being a good thing, right? Because that means that you don't have to be a developer, even though that I don't really like that because I'm a developer. It's actually something that can be implemented without having any integration development skills. It's basically just talking about different types of workflows. And of course, it is an integration hub. It is definitely the middle part that we were addressing there previously. And it has different sets of automations, and we're going to go through these a little bit more deeply in a bit. It has a lot of different pre-built transformations, because I like pre-built stuff. I don't really like to do the same thing twice if I have to. And it's scalable because it's possible to use this both from small businesses implementation to large businesses. And in regards to security and compliance, which is something that's really important nowadays, it's a compliance with all the enterprise standards that are out there. And the last part, AI. AI exists everywhere. But what they have built within Workato is a possibility to use AI to describe what you want and how you want to map information and map data. And you can get a suggestion. But as any kind of AI functionality, you probably want to do some tweaks to it anyway. But it's a good starting point. There's also a possibility to connect to different AI sources. We talked about generative AI, being able to connect that to OpenAI, for example, to get different sets of data, texts, generative parts that could be helpful for your automation. But okay, moving over to the connectors, because this is one of the keys, right? We talked about those different bubbles. And one thing that is good with Workato, and it exists in most of the middlewares out there, is that you have pre-built connectors to over 600 different SaaS solutions and databases in this solution, which is of course something that you want to reuse, and SAP is just one of them. And if there would be a scenario where it doesn't exist, that is something that has already been thought of from a Workato standpoint. Then you can build your own connector. And of course, you can even take an existing connector. You can modify that to your needs if you want to add more actions to it. And there's of course these different universal connectors as well. But this is really neat. And the cool part is that when you've built a connector, you can reuse that for other purposes. So all you partners out there that want to start implementing things, you can build up your own library. And there's actually a library called the community library, where you can publish your connectors that can be reused by others. So you can put your own brand there and say that we were the one creating this connector, but you can reuse that if you want to. Just give a shout out. I think one of the things that kind of struck me that was a little bit of, at least not a blocker, but I know that a lot of our customers are using on-prem solutions. ECC6 is just one of those examples, where you have a scenario where you have a firewall. I mean, it's basically just no possibility for you to go through that firewall without opening up ports. What happens when you open up ports? You create a security issue, right? There's a possibility that someone can use that that hole in your firewall to access your data. And this is something that's been thought about in terms of Workato as well. So they have something that they call on-prem agent, which allows you to have an installed agent behind your firewall that would communicate out to Workato instead of Workato communicating inside. And this is great, because that means that you don't really have to open up anything but a possibility to have a WebSocket tunnel between your firewall, but going out, not going in. And of course, this is something that is definitely worth looking at, because there might be other scenarios. And I had a conversation with a client in regards of AS400. I don't know, does anyone use AS400 out here? Oh yeah, you see. No, but you also know that AS400 doesn't really have an API. No. But it's built on DB2 databases. So you can actually build using one of the connectors for the database of AS400 to be able to access the data. But then, of course, you don't want to expose that to the internet. This is where the agent comes into play and helps out. All right, that was the connectors. The next part, and I start to get really hungry, and I want to kind of keep this photo here because I think that everyone else is hungry as well. But basically, what they have is something called recipes. And what is a recipe? A recipe is basically the orchestration and the transformation of the data combined in a recipe, having different kind of steps to facilitate a data transfer from one connector to another. And the same goes for here. They have a lot of different pre-built recipes that we can use. And one example, again, I like SAP as an example. There's a pre-built recipe to create an order in SAP, and I like that. Because I don't know how many times I've built integrations directly to SAP to call those BAPIs. I mean, I don't mind doing that, but if something is already pre-built, of course I want to use that. And the cool part is that when you're using one of these recipes, you can actually go in and modify them as well. So you basically branch them if someone is a nerd here knowing about branches in Git, which it could be really helpful if you want to make some modifications to it. And of course, you can create your own recipes. And this is where I started. I started building my own recipe, and then I understood that I can actually start how I use the different recipes as a starting point, and then make modifications to it, which is of course great. And the cool part is that you can also reuse these recipes. That means that you can build modules or modularize your recipes and call recipes within recipes. So that means that you can reuse a lot of different things multiple times. You don't have to redo stuff. And once again, that's something that I really like. All right. All about that thing. We can have a conversation. I'm probably going to have a webinar going a little bit more nerdy into this. But why would you like to go embedded? I mean, first of all, you know that your IT department needs to be part of. If you don't have a middleware as it is, you need to have your IT department to have resources that would go through and investigate if this is the middleware you want to go for, or that is another middleware. And of course, that's delaying all the possibilities for you to integrate. And also, I mean, the whole idea about the different connectors. I'm not going to repeat myself in regards to that, but But you will have a possibility to have an integration being set up with only having one contract, and that would be with Tacton, because Tacton integration would be powered by Workato. You don't have to purchase Workato. And of course, this means that you can actually manage, monitor, and deploy your integrations from within Tacton administration. So it's one point where you can have both the CPQ administration, but also your monitoring your integrations between the different systems. And I mean, also another thing that is really, really neat, of course, you don't have to involve IT to do anything but given access to the various systems out there. Tacton resources can actually implement the integrations for you. So you don't have to have your own staff doing this. Or you can have one of our Tacton partners, really skilled Tacton partners that can do this for you. And of course, you can do that as well if you want to. I'm not saying you have to, but you can. And one of the things that is important with this whole idea, and of course, we need to talk about the value in this. The fact that we have this embedded now in Tacton CPQ, that means that we can talk integrations already in phase 1. And I mean, CPQ is amazing, right? Configuring something that has a valid solution, pricing that valid solution and creating a quote, that's absolute value. But it's not monetary value. When do you get the monetary value? That's when you've sent the invoice and you got the payment from the customer. And how do you get that invoice? I mean, you need to place an order, right? And you need to produce that order, and then you need to distribute that order, and then you can send the invoice, or somewhere there in between. And if you think about this, with all the different things that I've said up until now, you can actually have this already implemented in phase 1. Because there's nothing that says that you can't, because now with Tacton can do this for you. The other part that I think is important, I mean, embedded and all, that's a good starting point, right? As I mentioned previously. But that might not really be enterprise to have a built-in integration platform within Tacton CPQ. But this is where we are proud to say that we can take those connectors and those recipes and move that over to a standalone Workato site later on, if you want to. You don't have to redo those integrations at any point. And that means that you're not locked in to Tacton CPQ to use that as a middleware for your future. And of course, the whole concept and idea would be that your IT team can take over the responsibility for that specific instance in a later manner, not necessarily in the beginning if they don't want to. And I mean, kind of all in all, what we just want to do is that we just want to get connected with Tacton CPQ powered by Workato. Cha! All right, time for questions. Do we have anyone that is running around with the microphone?
We do.
Erika.
Yes. Is this on? Yep. So why did you decide to take Workato? Why didn't you expand the functionalities in the trampoline technology?
So I wouldn't say that this replaces trampolines. The trampolines is a great possibility for you to quickly get an integration with Dynamics or with Salesforce up and running. What we're saying here is this kind of broadens the technology a little bit better, and the trampolines are not really enterprise ready. If you want to kind of move that over to a middleware later on, you can't really take the trampolines and move them to a middleware. So that's one of the reasons why we were looking at that.
So is it so that now there's a decision to be made before starting to create the integration to Salesforce, for example, between trampoline and Workato?
Yeah, absolutely. But that was also previously a decision that you can decide upon if you want to go for a middleware to do this already from the start. But yes, that's absolutely a decision that you can make. And I don't think that any of those implementations are better than the others. I mean, I'm all for using an integration platform or a middleware because I believe that if you're building something in there and have the ability to move over to a standalone integration platform later on is a great benefit. I'm not saying that trampolines are something that is in the past. It's not. Does that answer your question?
Yes, thank you.
Do we have any more questions? Yes.
Good presentation.
Thank you.
We saw this. Everything was a real-time integration. Does it support asynchronous way of?
Yes,
Okay.
it does. And that's an interesting part that you're saying that. Because you remember I was talking about recipes that can call recipes?
Yep.
So you can actually do those synchronously or asynchronously. So you can actually build that within even a recipe. So certain things needs to be asynchronously calls to different systems because you need to wait for the result.
Yep.
But there might be a scenario where you don't need to do that. And of course that should be asynchronous.
Right. So we don't lose the data which is sent to SAP if it is down for a while, right?
No.
Okay.
No.
Thank you.
Great question. One of the other things I thought was really interesting about this, I'm going to reemphasize something that Mathias covered, was we spent a lot of time internally within Tacton. We're constantly thinking about how do we accelerate time to value, right? How can we accelerate the not only the implementation process, but as you roll out new functionality and new capabilities, as you introduce new products, that type of thing. And so we're trying to make that as efficient and fast as possible because again, this is all about agility. One of the really interesting things from a market standpoint is a lot of the new companies that we're talking to, so our prospects, if you will, we continue to be surprised by how many of those don't actually have a standard middleware platform in place. And so one of the motivations behind this was let's have a set of out-of-the-box integrations available in those situations. Now that was the original thought. What we're finding is even for those companies that have a standard middleware platform in place, you may have to get in line with the IT guys before you get your integration done from a CPQ standpoint. And so these connectors can be used as an interim solution until your IT group is ready to actually go ahead and connect you to the middleware platform that's in place. So anyway, this gives us a tremendous amount of flexibility from an implementation standpoint, and that's one of the reasons we're really excited about it. Question over here.
That's good. Thank you.
Thank you.
I have another question. Let's say you're speaking about connectors with all these other systems, but is Tacton having also a connector,
Yes.
for example, that you can, from Power BI, analyze the data which is in Tacton?
So yes, that's kind of part of I mean, we are. This is fairly new for us. But what we're going to do is that we're going to build a connector where you can access the data within Tacton CPQ. So then, in your case, that would be building up using the connector to Tacton CPQ, and then have a recipe to make those calls that you were pointing out into Power BI, or even a possibility to put this data and can maybe refer that to what Gustav and was Joachim and Ingemar was talking about yesterday. Kind of part of the whole idea around data analytics is that you should have a data lake or a data warehouse where you're putting all your data. And you should start doing that already from the start. It's super cheap to have all the data being stored somewhere. I don't know what the price is for storing the data in Google that they had previously. So that should be part of your integration strategy and part of the recipes that would be built. So sending an order, for example, that should be something that's part of that.
Can I ask some other questions?
Oh, absolutely. Go for it.
The other,
No, only one.
Other presentation. So about the new features, let's say, one of the things that when I spoke with some colleagues here, everybody's struggling a little bit with the same subject about the order change or order amendment. So you make the configuration, everything goes to your ERP system, so they start to build, but then, okay, customer or inside thing, they want to change something.
Yeah.
How you handle this is a standard feature yet, let's say, in Tacton, or I hear everybody's doing manually.
So A great question. A really great question. And there are multiple answers to that question because some of our customers they allow for a total order change where they're canceling the order within their ERP system and creating a totally new one. Some of them are actually doing deltas, so basically looking at what has been ordered in the original order and just make the changes that comes from Tacton CPQ, so it's like a diff. So the functionality for that is, of course, the whole configuration aspect of that and the pricing aspect of that. That would be Tacton CPQ. But kind of handling the creation of the change order, that's all mapping of the data. And that's something that would happen within Workato or an integration platform or middleware that you have in your integration landscape.
Because now it's okay when the configuration is done, it's blocked. You cannot change anymore. So if then a change comes, now we are working this manually. We call it an annex or something. But then in ERP they change the things. So it has to go back to Tacton, and then that you in 1 year when you call up the configuration that it is still what we have delivered to the customer.
So I would say that this is a really interesting topic, and a lot of our customers are asking the same thing. And if you're making a change to an order, you can do that on different levels. You can do that on different supplies. I mean, I can't really get the screws from this brand. I need to take that from the other brand. But that's not necessarily something that is a variance. The variance that comes from a Tacton CPQ standpoint is to have that have a specific screw with a typical a couple of characteristics or typical features. So in that case, if you have selected a specific other screw, that is not something that exists within Tacton, and probably nothing that matters when you go into an order change later on or reordering. But if you have any other things that needs to be modified, if you're making a modification within your ERP system, you don't have the logic to take care of those changes. So this is where Tacton comes into play, and we strongly believe that you should make those changes within Tacton because that's where we have all the logic of how the things are fit together, rather than making the change in your ERP system and then feed that back into Tacton CPQ.
In one of the slides, then they were speaking about options. Let's say how this is handled. Is it that you say, okay, an option like a car, you buy a car and this is an option and this is the price for it. Is this already functional now in Tacton?
It is. Mm-hmm. It's already functional.
Okay.
I got a question back here.
Hey.
Oh, back there. Yeah.
So with this getting into Tacton, are there plans to make administration towards this more integrated in Tacton? So say, when it's the same tool, you could easily have as part of setting up your workflows, you could configure the integrations together inside Tacton administration in a way that you couldn't if it's an external tool. Are there plans to put it inside and properly integrated with administration and maybe put it in the trampolines and so on to make it even more seamless and powerful with things you couldn't even do with external tools?
I mean, there's nothing that limits us for doing any of those things that you were talking about. But I think that we need to start somewhere, right? And part of this, we want to have this embedded in Tacton CPQ. That's the first step. But then what you're talking about, should the recipes exist in a ticket? Should the connectors or the different versions of a connectors, could that be something that is maintained within Tacton CPQ, or is that something in Workato? And time will tell. And I'm not going to name the guy that is responsible for building this, but you've seen him on the stage. Right.
Yeah, looking forward to where it's going.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Anything else?
Other questions?
I love your questions, by the way. Thank you.
Do you have a timeline? When would you?
So we just finalized the partnership with them. So what we're doing now is that we're starting to do the work. I think we have our first really startup meeting on Friday next week, and then we're going forward with this. And of course, kind of what Anders Ingestad was talking about earlier, we want to do this in increments as well. We don't want to do a full-blown solution and then just kind of hand it out to you. We want to do this in increments. So maybe the first step would be to just ensure that we have an authentication that is handled within Tacton CPQ. And the next step could be what Ola was talking about over there, or maybe that would be like the 10th step. But the plan is to release this as soon as possible.
Yeah, and the key there is, so literally, as Mathias said, we just got through the contractual process with Workato, like literally at the end of last week. So it's hot off the press. If you think you have a very specific use case for one of these connectors, let's start working together now. Right, because like he says, we're working on the recipes, that type of thing, and there's going to be a certain level of back and forth we're going to need to do with you anyway to implement this. So bottom line is we can start immediately and have these available to you very, very quickly as a result. So excellent. Yep, sure.
Can I just shout out?
Yeah, go right ahead.
Matthias, based on your experience, is Workato the solution for all integrations? I mean, with the knowledge you have right now, or are there still situations where you would say you need to make point-to-point integrations on both sides?
Sorry. No, there's no need for you to have a point-to-point integration. I strongly disagree with that thing. You shouldn't build that. In that case, it's better to have a point-to-point, but do that within Workato. Because you need to build that transformation somewhere, anywhere, right? So why not build that on a really already existing iPaaS platform? Yeah, they gave you a microphone, but they didn't turn it on.
Hello.
Take that as a hint.
Right. But you see Workato as in solution to solving any integration issues in the future.
Yeah, but it's not only Workato. So like if you have MuleSoft, or if you have Boomi, or if you have Azure Integration Platform or SAP CPI, you can use that. I mean, pretty much if you're looking at the different middlewares out there, they're pretty much the same. The exception is the embedded functionality, like being able to embed this within Tacton CPQ, and that's absolutely one of the reasons why we went with Workato, because we believe that could be an easier way for our customers to adapt and to start using integration already from the start. Good question.
Yep.
Is there any thoughts about be able to handle the integration answer into the actual configuration problem? If you get what I mean.
So, I mean, you can already do that today. Within system configuration, you can do that.
Yeah, but that was not.
No, but I mean, we are looking at a lot of different possibilities out there, and I mean, we having a possibility to include that within a configuration result is absolutely one of the things that we have talked about. In general, doesn't really have to do anything with the middleware in that case. But yes, that has been a conversation, being able to maybe have already pre-built ETOs or something like that being populated.
One example would be, for example, because we can't do complex math, and then we can't use that for the configuration problem. So that would somehow be needed.
Yeah, and I actually built a solution for one of our prospects when we were talking about the product selector here previously. Like in the pump industry and in the engine industry or motor industry, you pretty much always have like some sort of selector. And we saw some examples of that. And what we have as a capability already today in system configuration is that we can create a step that is an external application. That external application can be running whatever kind of calculations that you're talking about, and then send that response back into Tacton CPQ to be used in the configuration. But then it's, of course, a stepwise approach.
Yeah, and system configuration doesn't support CSS.
No, that's correct.
Yeah.
But then you saw something called composable components here earlier. That could be interesting in that topic.
Yeah.
I'm just going to leave it there. But you're correct.